Elizabeth Warren proposes criminal penalties for spreading voting disinformation online. I'm going to stop you right there. Pretty sure that would violate the First Amendment. But it is fair to say if they keep the scope of any law specifically to disinformation around voting, it might pass muster. The challenge is when it comes to incitement, okay, a lot of people get away with literal incitement. There was a guy recently who tweeted something about offering money in exchange for people targeting law enforcement, essentially. He didn't get in trouble. Apparently, I guess he won his court case. I don't know exactly how it happened, but they said that it was a joke. Therefore, it's fine. I don't understand what Elizabeth Warren thinks she's doing in trying to police speech, even if it does try to, spread disinformation in elections. The reality is a lot of people are going to get things wrong. I'll put it this way. When you incite something, you have to have some kind of intention about what you're writing for the most part. How do you prove someone's intent when they say voting day is Saturday when it's really Sunday? You're then going to be like, they knew it wasn't, and they're just trying to trick their opponents. I don't see how that would actually work. People would just say, not my bad, I made a mistake. So maybe Elizabeth Warren is just, spinning her wheels and trying to make it seem like she's doing something. I will say in the press release, she basically makes it about intersectionality to an extent, like, the people who are being targeted are primarily the black community. It's like, oh, okay, I see where you're going with this. Yeah, I don't think your laws make sense. But let's read this story from CNBC, and I have her press release we'll read too. CNBC reports, Elizabeth Warren proposes criminal penalties for spreading disinformation around voting online. They say, quote, disinformation and online foreign interference erode our democracy, and Donald Trump has invited both. Warren said in a tweet Wednesday, anyone who seeks to challenge and defeat Donald Trump in the 2020 election must be fully prepared to take this on, and I've got a plan to do it. Oh, does she? Warren proposed to combat disinformation by holding big tech companies like Facebook, Twitter, and Google responsible for spreading misinformation designed to suppress voters from turning out. She says, I will push for new laws that impose tough civil and criminal penalties for knowingly disseminating this kind of information, which has the explicit purpose of undermining the basic right to vote. I guess technically, if you can prove intent, that's kind of like fraud, and it might actually work out. I think the challenge is how do they determine this? In which case, the the prosecutors, the federal prosecutors, will have to err on the side of assuming innocence. So it's not likely to ever actually do anything. Warren, who has been an advocate for breaking up big tech companies like Amazon and Facebook, has said that she wants to make big structural changes to the tech sector to promote more competition. It's part of a broader policy to stop disinformation, requiring action on tech companies and the government to come together to solve the problem. Other candidates, such as Senators Amy Klobuchar and Bernie Sanders, have also been skeptical of large technology companies. Sanders has repeatedly targeted Amazon, saying it should increase its wages and benefits to workers. Warren has slipped in recent polls ahead of the Iowa caucuses next week. She is in third place in national polls and fourth place in Iowa. Warren also criticized how the company's emphasis on profit contributed to misinformation in the 2016 election, such as false ads that led to polarization and could have suppressed votes from groups like black voters. I don't think she needed to actually put the emphasis on a racial group. She does mention in her press release conservatives and young people as well. We'll get to the press release. They say, as president, she would reinstate the position of cybersecurity coordinator at the National Security Council, a position crucial to protecting the U.S. She added she will also open up data for research so that academics and organizations can provide the public with knowledge on disinformation. Quote, the stakes of this election are too high. We need to fight the spread of false information that disempowers voters and undermines democracy. Warren said, I'll do my part, and I'm calling on my fellow candidates and big tech companies to do their part too. Well, let's take a look at the actual press release where she says, push to create civil and criminal penalties. It says government actions to address disinformation. Let's get specific. Is this lady trying to violate the First Amendment? Let's find out. In addition to the steps that campaigns and tech companies can take by themselves, I'll take a series of actions as president to further address the spread of disinformation. Push to create civil and criminal penalties for knowingly disseminating false information about when and how to vote in U.S. elections. Voter suppression efforts of any kind offend basic American values. I completely agree with that, Elizabeth Warren. In both 2016 and 2018 elections, online disinformation sought to depress voter turnout by telling people they could vote via text, giving people the wrong date for election day, and more. I will push for new laws that impose tough civil and criminal penalties for knowingly disseminating this kind of information, which has the explicit purpose of undermining the basic right to vote. Now she says knowingly, and therein lies the big problem. I gotta stop. You know what, man? I'm actually not too, on the surface, I kind of like it. I kind of like the idea. There are a lot of people that will make, memes or posts where it's like, hey, voting day is the 17th when it's actually not, or they'll give the wrong time. I don't like that. If you can't win an election fairly, then you shouldn't win an election. And if there are people actively trying to win by cheating out other people and suppressing votes, by all means, I think we should do something about that. Can you actually do it the way she's proposing? I honestly don't think so. I don't think so. Because what you're going to have is people cleverly disguising their efforts, and there will always be some kind of loophole for spreading disinformation. There's nothing you can do about this. You can make a meme and say, I just got the date wrong. Sorry, my bad. Prove they knew. Maybe they could. Maybe it'll be very specific circumstances where we know somebody is trying to manipulate an election, and that's fair. But for the most part, Elizabeth Warren's got a whole bunch of fake ideas that just seem to be complete and utter nonsense. Case in point, the wealth tax, which literally makes no sense. But they go on to say this. Reinstate the position of cybersecurity coordinator. We know that. She also adds, convene a summit of countries to enhance information sharing and coordinate policy responses to disinformation. Countries around the world are struggling to address disinformation. You can't do anything about it, man. That's the big problem. People are stupid. Okay, not everybody's stupid. But as George Carlin says, think about how dumb the average person is. Now realize half of them are stupider than that. What do? I'll tell you what, man. You go on Twitter right now when you search my name, and I assure you will find wave after wave of leftists saying Tim Pool is the dumbest man on YouTube. And maybe they're right. I don't think so, but hey, I'm not the king of YouTube. I don't know everything, and maybe it's true. So what? Who do we get to figure out who is actually smarter than somebody else? If people are spreading disinformation because they're dumb, you going to lock them up? Look, you've got people who think the earth is flat. They're free to do so. There's nothing you can do about that. There are people who believe a lot of crazy things. I probably believe a lot of crazy things. I tend to be a skeptic, but I've got, personal intuitions and ideas, spiritual ideas, faith-based ideas. People would claim one religion is crazier than the other. There's no way to police knowledge. You just can't do it. So while I can respect the effort, all I really see from this, from Elizabeth Warren, is two things. One is an attempt to become relevant. Obviously, she's going to put out these plans. She's trailing. Her polls are dropping. She needs to do better. So she's like, what can we do? I know. Let's address misinformation. But all she's really saying is a buzzword. Russia. Disinformation. She talks about the internet, research agency, the Russian group that was engaging in this. The reality is disinformation, intentional disinformation, is not that big of a deal. It's really not. We know from the Mueller report, we know from cybersecurity experts, the efforts of the Russians didn't have that big of an impact. So what Elizabeth Warren is doing is she's pointing at the fact that people sometimes get things wrong and trying to inflate that into this grand scale Russia problem. I'm sorry, man. It's just not the case. I think there's a reality here that she's missing. The sad truth. A lot of people are stupid. They believe stupid things. Now, I'll tell you what. When I look at stories, when I comment on them, I go to the source, okay? I'm really tired today. It's just been crazy. And you know what? I still have enough energy. If I'm going to do a segment, I'm going to look at the source. You see the story from CNBC talking about Warren. I pulled up her press release to see what she was literally talking about. Let me tell you something. I have seen people spread disinformation, prominent YouTubers, progressives, because they don't know how to use Google, or they're too lazy, or they're just stupid. You'd probably agree with me if I said progressives were stupid. They're not all stupid, but when I use that example, I'm sure people are going, yep, that's right. But there are conservatives who get things wrong, and there are people who choose certain sources over other sources. So you know what, man? What Warren's trying to do is she's just trying to take the issue of Russia and misinformation and turn it into a talking point so she can try and gain some kind of traction. I think it was a failed effort. It's not going to work. In fact, I don't think her idea for criminal penalties will even pass First Amendment muster. I think even if you want to lie, you're allowed to lie. Granted, fraud isn't allowed, so maybe she will get past that. Fine, I accept that. So let's read the last two things she says. She says she wants to establish rules around information and data sharing to ensure that platforms can share with each other and with government while respecting individuals' privacy. That's never going to happen. You know what's going to happen once the big tech companies who have everything on you start sharing with the government? Yeah, they're not going to respect your privacy. They're going to play the game where they're like, we're not looking directly at your profile, just the information around it, and then they know literally everything about you. And she wants to consider additional sanctions against countries that engage in election interference through disinformation. In the case of Russian interference, ding, 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 there you go. The R word popped up. Let me tell you something. If this ever happened, it would be used by the U.S. government to impose sanctions on countries. They look. How do we know they're actually engaging in this? Have you ever seen the IRA? Have you ever met these people? The answer is no. They can just say it, and you can only assume it's true. I don't know if we should give the government the ability to police disinformation. Hey, can't say I'm surprised it's coming from Warren's camp, though. It doesn't tend to be the right arguing about this kind of stuff, though it does when it comes to certain issues of adult content, strangely. Anyway, you get the point. I think it's interesting. I agree with the sentiment. I don't think Warren actually cares, nor does her plan make any sense. So important enough to talk about, though. I got a couple more segments coming up in a few minutes. Stick around, and I will see you all shortly.